So I'll leave the floor to Ms. Rasha Shammout. She's the manager of Pfizer Jordan, and she will be introducing her panelists for this session today. And I'll give the floor to Rasha now. Thank you.
Thank you, my dear. So good afternoon. We would like to start our session entitled Investing in Healthcare for the Future. First of all, I would like to thank AmCham so much for having this opportunity and for holding this event and dedicating this specific time to talk about the healthcare sector during and beyond COVID-19. My name is Dr. Rasha Shammout. I'm the manager of Pfizer Pharmaceutical in Jordan. I'm also the COVID-19 vaccine launch navigator. It's my great pleasure to be here today. The last 2 years were game changer for healthcare sector, as we all witnessed unprecedented time, full of challenges and innovations, where also the power of science was clearly obvious. That's why today we are gathered here to hear more from our expert speaker here and on the line about this pandemic. How does it change our life? What were the lessons we learned? And what are the opportunities we might have in the future? I would like to introduce the panel. Joining us from Egypt, Dr. Riyad Armanias, the AmCham Egypt member of the board and the Chief Executive Officer of Eva Pharmaceutical. Dr. Carol Hassoun, the General Manager of Roche Pharmaceutical, joining us from Lebanon. And Dr. Salah Mawajde, he should be here any minute. He's the Vice President of Regulatory and Medical Affairs, Hikma Pharmaceutical Jordan. And Dr. Mazen Abu Samha, the country head of Janssen Pharmaceutical Log, elected chair of the leading innovative biopharmaceutical research company. So most welcome all. Hope this session will be fruitful and will give you more insights about pharmaceutical sector during and beyond COVID-19. So we would like to start with our first question. It's about the COVID-19 pandemic. What does this pandemic highlight about the healthcare sector, its strength and ability to adapt and innovate? I would like to leave the floor for yours to start. Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Rasha. Actually, the COVID has imposed significant impact on healthcare systems and also on economies in most of the countries around the world. So probably the lessons that we have learned from COVID situation was that healthcare system, investing in healthcare system is critical for economic growth. I mean, we have learned that the hard way. I mean, we have been in lots of discussions sometimes with public officials, with authorities, talking about the value of healthcare system, but we have seen it. We have seen it now clearly when the COVID impacted the economy significantly, and of course the health of individuals. And I think when we look at 2 years back, and we try to understand what we have learned out of this situation, we learned that we need to invest in healthcare system. We learned that innovation is critical. And we have seen that, I mean, without vaccines, without treatments, how the situation would have been looked like. I mean, it would be really bad situation. So that's the value of innovation. That's the value where we try to encourage and advocate for spending in innovation, for spending in public healthcare systems, because this is what we have. We will be able to achieve, to avoid crisis, to ensure economic growth. So that's probably the top two, I would say, learnings. And from the positive angle, I think also we have learned around the value of technology. We have been more technology, using virtual platforms. I would probably capitalize and give examples for some of the health institutions in the country that they have started to use electronic appointments, e-clinics, dispensing to patients the medication at home. I think all of these add value of how can we ensure that this is not only driven only for COVID, if we can replicate that to other diseases and improve the healthcare outcomes in the countries.
Yes, thank you. Welcome, Dr. Salah. Thank you. So, Carol, please. Yeah.
Is it working? Yeah. Thank you. Good evening. For me, what we have learned from this pandemic are actually two things. One is for us as industry, and the second is mainly for the governments. And when it comes to the industry, we actually saw during this pandemic that the value of innovation and the need for collaboration are really vital. So when it comes to the innovation, we have all seen that the value of innovation is really huge. When companies invest for decades in research and development to be able to bring to the market a new molecule or a new mechanism of action, it's really worth it, because that's what actually helped us respond fast to the pandemic. That's what made the speed in reacting to the pandemic possible. So investing in innovation and the value of innovation was really well seen during this pandemic. The second learning for us as an industry is the value of collaboration. That is also very vital. What we have observed during this pandemic over the past 2 years is something that we would like to see more of. And it's all about collaboration. So during the past 2 years, our researchers and our companies were actually working together, collaborating to make sure that the development is advanced and is accelerated, the development of new vaccines and new molecules, but also the production and also the distribution. Usually companies that compete together don't collaborate that much. So this collaborative ecosystem, if we can call it so, is something that we would like to leverage on moving forward, even past the pandemic, because we believe that this is what will help us accelerate the access to innovation to the patients everywhere in the world. So that's from the industry perspective. And from the government, as Mazen said, the preparedness of government to face pandemic is something that needs to be well prepared ahead of time. Investments need to be made, and probably having like robust long-term preparedness plan for the pandemic is something that every single country in the world would need. And one of the elements that was very obvious also during the COVID is that these preparedness plans need to include the modernized data and the reporting. So having a digital infrastructure in the country would help respond faster and control the pandemic in a better way. Plus, having a clear vision on how the private and the public sector need to work together in such crisis is also something very important, and that need to be well thought of without, like during normal times when a pandemic is not there. Because this complementary work of the private and public sector is very important during crisis, and if we can leverage on it even after it, that would be even better.
Thank you, Carol. Dr. Salah, our question was, what has the COVID-19 pandemic highlight about the current healthcare system, its strength and ability to adapt and innovate? And here I would like also to get your elaboration more. What if, God forbid, we have crisis in a different way, not only pandemic? What if we have natural disaster, for example, conflict, political, war, and anything? What is our learnings from the COVID that could compact such future crises in the future? The floor is yours. Please turn it on.
Good evening, everyone, and I apologize for coming late. No one can predict traffic in Amman, just like we cannot predict pandemics. Let me begin by answering the second question first. I think there will be The reason, if we look at our history as humanity, probably, I think I counted more than 100 different epidemics along the years. The most famous, and I think everyone talks about, is Spanish flu. But this is just one, and there are tens like that. There are cities or villages wiped out by disease. If you want to compound this issue with other types of man-made or natural disasters, it can be big. But the question is, can we really plan for such big events, and at what cost? In reality, there is a proverb, a friend of mine who lives in Latin America told me about. Health is priceless, but it has a cost. If we go backward and compare the pandemics to earthquakes, can all countries change their building codes to withstand an earthquake of Richter scale 8? No one can. Probably some countries are willing and capable of doing that. We are seeing the end of the pandemic. Okay, our efforts collectively did matter, including the collaboration you just mentioned. But I personally believe the virus decided to stop because of the variants. And I can prove it by numbers. Still, we are very far from the immunity levels we talked about previously. And I'm talking about global scale. And in pandemics, we should never talk about countries. It's a globe. And again, COVID-19 taught us that you can raise the immunity level to very high levels, but your neighbors are at 10% or below, you will get a different variant from them. So unless we act collectively, then our efforts will be in vain. So the question will be answered by another question: can we really plan? And probably our esteemed colleagues in the audience can have also some input, because they are coming from different walks of life. The quick response is probably yes, but at what level of planning? And maybe what is more important is the agility and the speed of response, rather than build hospitals which will be unused. I bet you some of the hospitals built in Amman, Jordan, will not be used 2-3 months from now. And the question will be what to do with them: move them, dismantle them, bring more patients to them so that we justify their existence. So this is a question that probably everyone can pitch in and answer to it.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Salah. We decided to leave the questions to the end of the session, so anyone would like to have question, just please keep it to the end of the session. We have Dr. Riyad. What do you think about our responses to COVID and the lessons we learned? What do you think from your perspective, please?
Well, first, let me check if I'm heard well. Can you hear me well?
Yes, well.
Okay, super. So first, I apologize for not being able to be there in person due to family obligations. I would have loved to be in Amman, and will definitely make it up. I think COVID has really heightened the importance of healthcare to society and healthcare innovation. But it has also showed us that innovation doesn't need to take so long, that healthcare, like other industries, can have innovation happening at a pace that follows the normal rhythm of the life that we live nowadays, and technological improvements. And I think it has been mentioned by Carol very eloquently. I think we need to continue to invest. I think we need to continuously invest in healthcare, so that we continue to adapt and continue to be ready. Because without significant capacity, we wouldn't have been able to do what was needed to be done. I will keep my comments as short as possible. realizing that I'm participating virtually, which is not ideal.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Riyad. So thank you, our speakers. So now moving to the next part of the discussion, we would like to know more. What were the learnings we had what were the responses we had as a pharmaceutical MENA company during the pandemic, and how we can further improve the investment and scientific enhancement as a MENA pharmaceutical sector in the region? Yes, please, Mazen would like to comment.
Well, thank you, Rasha. I think investment in healthcare sector requires a focus on innovation and how can you protect innovation. And one of the things that we always advocate is how can we reinforce IP laws, intellectual properties laws. How can we ensure that those intellectual property laws also are not, I would say, stepping in the way of innovation reaching to patients. And we have seen so many examples during this period of time. I think our guest panelists, either Dr. Salah or Mr. Riyad, could speak about it. I mean, when we talk about localization and other stuff. So one of the things that we need to keep in mind in order to improve investment in healthcare is IP. IP is critical, and we truly advocate that, because this is how you can attract innovation to the countries, and maybe learn from the innovation and create an innovation, I would say, centers and hubs that can be eventually, by time, be center for innovation for the country.
Yes.
That's from my side.
Exactly. Carol, please.
Thank you. I'll answer with a special focus on Lebanon, because in Lebanon, not only we had to face COVID, but we actually had to face as well an economic crisis and currency devaluation, all topped with the Beirut blast that compounded all together. They truly weakened the healthcare system in general. And as an industry, as a group of 20 multinational companies in acting or operating in Lebanon, we collectively responded to the situation by focusing on few items. The first one, we wanted first to make sure that the vaccines are available in the country the soonest possible. So that was the number one priority. And when they are available, we wanted to enable them collectively as an industry, not as one single company who's bringing the vaccine. And that's what we did, because already the healthcare system was so fragile. And so we offered the infrastructure that was needed to enable the vaccination program the soonest possible, which made Lebanon one of the first countries to be able to access vaccines, COVID vaccines. So like one of the things that we have worked on is actually having a call center for vaccination, or bringing the syringes or the diluents. So these are the kind of infrastructure discussions that I wanted to bring to the table. At the same time, we focused a lot on ensuring a continued supply of medications to the country, because during COVID, we had a huge supply issue at global level. And that's one of the topics that we were keen on focusing on, to make sure that we have adequate levels of supply to the country. I'm sure the same happened in Jordan as well, and across the MENA region. Definitely in Lebanon, we had other issues related to the subsidization that we needed to deal with, but that was also a priority for us. We also supported through donations of medications, of PPEs, and other solutions, especially after the blast, so to be able to rebuild the hospitals and the institutions that were destroyed. But when it comes to the investment, we believe that an investment can only happen if we're able to, can only be attracted if we're able to maintain a certain level of clinical care in the country, despite everything. And that's why our focus is mainly on maintaining this high level of clinical care by keeping the access to innovation in the country, be it through the subsidization scheme or through patient support programs, or sometimes through bringing clinical trials to the country. Participating in reforms is one way also of helping to bring the investments from the World Bank and from other donors and development banks who are willing to invest in healthcare in general and medications in particular in Lebanon.
Yes, thank you, Carol. And here I would like also to have thoughts from the industry, pharmaceutical industry. Dr. Salah, if you please, about the responses.
Yes. I think, again, going back to the COVID issue, there are one big lesson we learned, all of us, is not to focus so much and be tunnel vision to just one aspect of the whole pandemic, which is the vaccination. For good reasons, of course, yes, it's needed. But then sometimes in the midst of the whole pandemic, we forget that there are patients who need to be treated from the COVID itself, and there are patients who need so many other medications.
Yes.
And just like free market economy, it works well if there is no government intervention. One of the issues where we sadly saw the nationalistic feelings of countries rose to the surface, and government started to interfere in import-export. So many of the raw materials that we need, and Hikma is a generic company working in so many regions, but MENA is one of the, because of the so many markets we sell in, we faced that issue. All countries suddenly, they wanted to be taking care of their own population. And this in itself created a new variable that even the best of planners would have never thought of, that one day will come when a totally open market will tell you, no, we cannot export to Jordan this particular material. And can you imagine the disruption? And some of those countries, they request some drugs that we manufacture in Hikma. I have to mention this, even generic companies, we counted the number of medications that an ICU patient needs during the pandemic. And of course, they know they will need analgesics, antibiotics, blood thinners, etc. 11 out of 13 medications needed in the US were supplied by Hikma. But then we had so many limitations, supply chain issues, lockdowns in the beginning. How can you expect a pharmaceutical company to provide the needed medication when people cannot move?
Yes.
Until you intervene again and you'll say, okay, here are the permits and you can work from this hour to that hour. All of this, no one thought of, because probably we didn't see any pandemic in our lifetime of this magnitude.
It was unprecedented time for
Thank
all of
you.
us, of course. Yes. And here I would like also to hear from EVA Pharmaceutical perspective, Dr. Riyad. So what were the responses of EVA during this pandemic, and how we can also improve the investment and advancement, please?
Sure. So I will echo some of the comments that have been said. I think in COVID, it became very clear that we need to work on access rather than economies. And by saying so, I think we need to work more on localizing versus the most efficient way of doing things, which is basically economies of scale and doing one thing in one part of the world rather than closer to point of use. So localization was high on our agenda. We didn't manufacture APIs before COVID. We designed, built, and started manufacturing some of the APIs, which were aided by a tech transfer through some of the companies we represent, specifically Gilead Sciences, and localizing such API manufacturing and localizing manufacturing of the product, of the finished product, enabled this product to be available in the region before many other regions. So localizing the supply chain and localizing the value add, I think, is important. And we started to learn that redundancy and access are much more important than pure economics. And I hope that the regulators also see that when they're pricing services and products. I think this has been very important, and localization also helps investment. But it has to be part of a national agenda. It has to be part of a company strategy, so that it's well planned and it deals with the main pain points. I think the pharmaceutical sector has been quite agile, especially the generic players like Hikma or ourselves, in making so many more products available, and kind of changing plans suddenly to deal with the crisis that is and was brought upon us. I think it's a testament to the agility of the sector, and an agility that I hope continues to deploy its capabilities in areas of need that are still there. So with further localization, you could see that countries like Egypt had so few shortages compared to many countries, let's say in Africa, that had much lower local manufacturing of the value chain.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Riyad. So our third topic is about existing regional and international collaboration in the healthcare sector. We would like to hear more from our speakers, expert, about these existing collaboration between our region and international. Yes, Mazen, please.
Yeah, thank you, Rasha. So collaborations, I think our also guest panelist, Dr. Salah and Mr. Riyad, can comment on that, because I think there are lots of examples in the region about localization. But I would like also to draw the attention on another kind of investment. When we talk about clinical trials, this is probably one of the most lucrative kind of investments that country would go into. And I'll give like an example. If you go like in 2019, research-based pharmaceutical companies, they spent in 2019 around $83 billion in research and in clinical trials. And all of these clinical trials are not only happening in the US, they are actually because of very valid and good reasons. They want to diversify the patient pools. They want to diversify the investigators, so that they are going outside of the US into Europe. And now they are trying to penetrate even different markets from ethnicity perspective, like the Asian and even the Middle Eastern, I would say, regions. So what can be done actually to improve the ecosystem, the environment in any country? And I will pick probably Jordan as an example, because I work here for Jordan. So what can be done to make sure that the environment is lucrative to attract a clinical trial? Because this is an investment. You can see that as an investment from multiple angles. First of all, access to innovative treatments to patients early on in the life cycle of the product, so patients will have access to those treatments. This industry, or this investment in clinical trials, will drive lots of jobs. When we talk about either direct or indirect jobs, because you're going to hire lots of people, you're going to build capabilities in research, which eventually will feed into the country. And most importantly, when you look at those clinical trials, it really remove, I would say, burden on patients sometimes who are really in bad need for medications, or new hope, if we want to call it like this. So this is probably a call of action, and I can reflect on that from the local area working group for the pharmaceutical industry in Jordan, for the innovative pharmaceutical industry in Jordan, where we have signed an MOU with the Ministry of Health here in Jordan. And one of the items of that MOU was to focus on how can we build capabilities for research, or how can we build this system for clinical trials so that the country will be lucrative enough to attract clinical trials.
Yes, thank you, Mazen. And let me comment here that there are countries worldwide that depend on their GDP with clinical trial. It's kind of investment, and since here we are talking about investment in general, this is one of the ways to drag some investment from outside the region to our countries. So thank you so much. Yes, Carol, please.
I will try to bring a different perspective as well. So localization is definitely like one point. Clinical trials, as Mazen mentioned, is another way of bringing investment. A third way of building those collaborations and partnership is actually around building more sustainable and more equitable healthcare systems. And the partnerships that I would like to shed light on that we were particularly invested in over the past 2 years actually in Lebanon. First is the development together with the US Chamber actually of Commerce in Washington. We were able to form the Lebanon group to build advocacy around the need for funding the healthcare system in Lebanon and bringing foreign funding to the healthcare system in Lebanon and to access to medications in particular. And the advocacy efforts that were done by the US Chamber, by the pharma companies, the embassy, the US embassy, and other European embassies as well, development banks, the World Bank, and multiple other stakeholders was really phenomenal. And this is one of the partnerships and collaborations that we're very proud of, and that is today advancing towards hopefully finding some tangible solutions that could help the patients in Lebanon to continue to have access to their treatments. Another way of collaborating, be it with the international community or with the local governments, is the reform plan that we're kicking off today, not today, like a few weeks back, together with the WHO, the Ministry of Health, the local syndicates, the pharma companies, the local manufacturers, to build a national pharmaceutical strategy for the country. And when strategies are built and the visions are clear, then hopefully negotiations with the IMF would be facilitated for more investments in the countries to support local manufacturing, but also access to innovative medications. So this is another way of partnering and collaborating with the international community and with the local government, both the public sector and the private sector. So these are like 2 examples. And if I want to give a third example, and that's the last one, for the Middle East region, what we're doing as pharma companies, actually the Middle East and Africa Pharma has funded a research by IHE, the Swedish Institute for Health Economics, IHE, on cancer care in 9 countries in the Middle East and Africa. Jordan is one of them, Lebanon is one of them, and many other countries as well. And this report that was launched on the occasion of the World Cancer Day is actually the spark. We would like to look at it this way, is the spark for building national cancer plans in those countries or to strengthen the currently existing national cancer plans in those countries. And this is the work that our local pharma groups are leading together with the different stakeholders in each country to strengthen those plans or to build them from scratch if they are in existence. So that's also another way of collaborating within the countries where we that we serve and that we support.
Thank you, Carol. Dr. Salah, the floor is yours.
Thank you. That's a tough question, but again, during the last 2 years, because of the ability to attend meetings virtually, I was able to attend many of the World Economic Forum meetings. And health remains to be the focus. For 2 years in a row, out of 10 emerging technologies, 4 of the 10 is health. And I can list them for you. It's from robotic surgery to personalized medicine, digital medicine, and genomic sequencing, etc. Also, and artificial intelligence and data. Most of these technologies, when you look deep into it, it cannot be done at the local level. It has to be thought of just crossing the borders. With translation technologies, patients now can be in one country and the physician can be in another country. And the medication will be coming from a different countries. People even didn't know what really happens globally with the supply chain modifications that happened because of the pandemic. Things are moving very, very rapidly. But it has many impacts, and probably it needs a different format, different brainstorming sessions. How can we bring this? Because this will be tackled probably at a different way of thinking than we are used to. The world is changing now. The World Economic Forum is talking about Industrial Revolution number 4. So we are talking about getting the vaccine to people with equal distribution, but we are still far away from it.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. Maybe you answered part of the next question, which is...
If I may add one thing,
Yeah,
because this
please
is
go.
very interesting and very important, because definitely we need to start building today the infrastructure for personalized healthcare, because that's going to be the future. So, and we need to bring those technologies to our region, to our countries. When we're talking digital health, this is a big revolution, I would say, in medicine. And collaborating with the tech companies that are usually not based in the Middle East is very important. And this is something that we're starting to do. Actually, we're starting to see more and more collaboration between pharma companies, probably local manufacturers as well, and tech companies to bring to life those digital health solutions to the patients. And this is an area where we need more investments in.
Yes, thank you. And you should, I think you have answered partially of some of next question, which is the opportunity for knowledge and technology transfer from US and outside the region to our region. So I think if you would like to add more about this part, or it's good for you, Doctor.
No, I think the opportunities are limitless, and even poor countries can really play a role just by supplying data.
Yes.
Even if they don't do anything, which is probably the simplest. But then this comes with the issue of confidentiality and privacy. I was reviewing what we did in Jordan, for example. And I looked at where is the data stored. Easily, there may be a breach in the integrity of the data, because there are private labs, there are national labs, there are hospitals here and there, and they collect personal information. And then person X is analyzing the data and publishing report here and there. And there is no unified single database with somebody doing quality supervision on who is doing what.
Yes.
So movement of patient information from Jordan, from South Africa to London or New York is what we want. But then some of the countries, including Jordan, probably we don't have even the legal structure to regulate how the data is transferred. Okay, they will tell you, we removed the identifier, but the identifier is not just a name.
Yes.
For example, in the US, I think there are 20 different things you have to remove from an MRI so that somebody else can look at it without identifying you. Even as simple information as maybe a telephone number work or zip code and things like that.
Yes.
I don't think we are prepared, but it's never too late. I think COVID provided a huge lesson in this. And the technologies that is coming, most of it is technology based, and it dictates that we start putting the laws in place, not to block it, to facilitate it, to control it. Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Salah. So to you, Dr. Riyad, the same question, but from your perspective, please. What is the opportunity for knowledge and technology transfer from US to the region, and how we can further enhance our collaboration between our healthcare provider and international healthcare provider? Yes, please.
Sure. So you want to go to the fourth question?
Yes, exactly.
I totally agree. The opportunities are limitless. I think now we understand that it's in everybody's interest to have knowledge and technology transfer done. I think something that a lot of people would agree with is the statement that nobody's safe until everybody's safe, especially in immunization or vaccination. I think we need to make sure that people understand, or technology companies that have the technology understand that it's in everybody's interest that you have local capability to defend, and local capability to stand against new viral or bacterial threats or healthcare ailments in general. In that regard, I think there is a big reluctancy to really do tech transfer. I think we see, especially the big companies in vaccines, talking about localization of manufacturing. And in that regard, I think manufacturing is not enough. I think what we need is the transfer of capabilities to locally develop new vaccines or new therapies. But just locally manufacturing deals with the supply chain issue. It doesn't help, you know, the whole international society of locally acting against new threats. I think we all knew that there is a new threat, new variant that is kind of bubbling in China the last few days. So if this could be taken care of locally, I think we would all feel better. We're an Egyptian company. We exist in Egypt, and I think Africa has been the cradle of life, viruses, bacteria. So we definitely would like to see more local combating of new threats. So I think we need to make a better case for the technology providers. Echoing the comments that were said earlier, I think we need to make sure that they feel safe, that the IP that they're going to transfer will be protected. But I think it's in everybody's interest that this technology is transferred. Just commenting quickly on the previous question, I think through COVID, it's clear that collaboration is a must, but also that collaboration is possible. We have been working with local entities to develop a vaccine, completely local vaccine with 7 entities, because each one of us can do a small part. But if we pool together our resources, we can actually produce a locally manufactured, a locally developed vaccine for COVID-19 totally from scratch. And this vaccine is in clinical trials. Yes, we're late, but it's a first. It's a first for Egypt, it's first for Africa. And this was only possible through an extensive collaboration, okay? So what's important to advocate is, how do you make collaboration successful? And that's very important. That's very important for the success of knowledge transfer or for the success of collaboration. We've worked with many companies and many entities. We've worked with Gilead for voluntary licensing of remdesivir, which enabled us to have remdesivir in Egypt and the region 3 weeks after being approved by the FDA. We were able to do that because we worked really at risk, and then we got the voluntary license, so we were able to save as many patients as possible very early on. But we've also worked with MPP, which is part of the United Nations, and they have been doing an excellent work to make the technologies of the new COVID products, new COVID therapies available. But we need to remove these hurdles so that the technology transfer can get to patients fast, and remove the fear that is currently stopping some of these products, although the tech transfer is ready to go, but the products don't get to the patients as quickly as we would like them to. So we need to work on making these collaborations and tech transfer successful.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Riyad. And would like to hear from Carol or Mazen about knowledge and technology transfer between US or outside the region to our region. Mazen or Carol? Carol, yes, please.
I can, yeah. I just wanted to reconfirm that multinational companies, they have actually agreed to grant waivers, patent waivers for the manufacturing of COVID treatment in LMIC countries. So this is like one step forward in terms of collaborating with a wider range of manufacturers to make sure that the innovation or the treatments are actually accessible for millions of people around the globe. Definitely, like the tech transfer is very important, and knowledge transfer is equally important, and that's why we advocate a lot as well as multinational companies to build those bridges between the US and the Middle East, but also between the European countries and the Middle East, to have this expert network, be it at the level of therapeutic areas to elevate the standards of care, or at the level of payers, policymakers, governments, to instate value-based healthcare, to build more sustainable healthcare systems, more equitable healthcare systems. So we believe that investing also in this type of knowledge transfer and the experts networking is also equally important.
Yes, Mazen, please.
If I would like to add to this, I think the critical part, if we look ahead like 20 years from today, I think we're going to be having, as probably Dr. Mawajdi said, it's more of a gene therapies coming on the way. It's more of targeted therapies. I think the way we treat patients would be a bit different than today. It will not be a simple prescription that you go and dispense your medication from the pharmacy. I think what we are going to see is more of very personalized medicine gene therapies, and to link this with the focus on how can we drive research and innovation in the country. This is critically important so that we can go ahead with this innovation coming on the way with the gene therapies. If we continue not to invest in researchers and in innovation in the country, I think we'll be lagging behind. So it's critical today to invest in researcher and clinical trials development, and how our medical staff upgrade their capabilities from research perspective, because what's coming will not be most probably a simple medication. It will be very targeted therapy and gene therapy.
Yes, thank you. Now we would like to open the floor for the audience for any question and answer. We are ready for this. Yes, please. Yes, please. The chocolate lady, as I remember. Yes, please.
Actually, I want to speak about the effect of COVID on the mental health. It's devastating. The suicide, the lockdown, the unemployment, everything. I remember I had COVID before the vaccines. It was terrible. I reached to an edge that either I will collapse or I will work on my mental health. Because I believe in motivational speeches, positivity, etc., I worked on myself. And it was very difficult at that time. A lot of patients were going to ICUs and a lot of death. I didn't see any research on the mental health. If you look at UNDP, 30% of suicide of youngsters. If we want to be innovative, creative, we need to have mental health, good, healthy mental health. Without this, you give me the vaccine, I am perfect health, but my mind is zero thinking. So how can I have the economy to be prosperous? How can I have foreign direct investment? How can I have all these creativity, innovation, when I cannot think? So what did you do? As looking at the vaccines, about the mental health, it's critical, it's crucial, it's devastating, please tell us.
Yes, first of all, we find the vaccine. This is the key point. So we find the vaccine and we deliver it to Jordan. This is the big thing we did, and we are so proud with it as a pharmaceutical company. Yes, totally aligned with you that the mental health, this is unmet need. It is here in Jordan, but I think other countries were tackled this point, and there are centers to treat people or help them overcome their COVID cases, especially when there was no vaccine at that time. But yes, you are right. There's a study recently published that the COVID can cause some mental issues or some brain issues related to memory. I would like to leave the floor for our speakers if you would like to comment over the question.
I can go. So I think this is a very important question actually, and we have seen it, we have suffered that. I mean, anyone who had a COVID or a close, I would say, relative with a COVID, he would feel the same, as you have said. I think it requires more of a government effort because and policy work that addresses the media, because one of the big issues here is the media and how and what media communicates to the public. Because let's look at it from that angle. If we continue to impose regulations which are from medical perspective sometimes correct, but from the mental health perspective, it might impact people negatively. I have kids who suffered a lot during the COVID when we were at lockdown. They suffered a lot. I mean, you could see the difference in their behaviors. That's true, but at the end of the day, we need, as you have said, to address the positive part of it. We need probably to talk more about the positives of like today is a new day. There is an innovation coming. I think we need to be ready, as probably Dr. Mawajdi said also, that might not be the only crisis in health that we will face. We are going to face more of that, but then we need to be ready, I would say, psychologically for that, and of course, from medical and healthcare perspective, ready for this.
Another question, please. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, distinguished panel. Actually, it's more of a comment. The panel mentioned about robotics, and no one mentioned recently Jordan was very proud to had the first robotic surgery recently. I think they call it the CMR surgical. And if anyone can comment on that and how Jordan's initial pioneering into the robotics, how can that play a major role in the healthcare of Jordan? Thank you.
Yes, anyone would like to? I think we are pharmacy here, and pharmacists maybe could help.
If I may, thank you for picking on that piece of information. What they are talking about is expanding because the robotic surgery is not new. It has been there for many years. But now I think it's expanding into so many other, the scope is becoming wider. But it's not only robotic surgery. the list, I can supply you with the moderator with the list of issues. As I said during my discussion, out of 10, 4 are health related. Artificial intelligence, I will tell you one important piece because this is real. One of my friends is working in Omaha, Nebraska in the medical school. He's a family physician. And they are instituting a very simple system to predict stroke for patients who undergo imaging. Normally it takes 2 hours or more until the MRI and the report reaches the treating physician. With the new system, within minutes, with artificial intelligence, it can predict with high degree of accuracy that this patient is a stroke patient. And it notifies a team who are dedicated in that particular hospital to treat stroke patients. Within minutes, they are beside the patient. So if you put this holistic approach into technology, whether it's gene therapy, whether it's robotic surgery, whether it's artificial intelligence, big data, etc., collectively, definitely, I think we are going to see better health for everyone. But as in the beginning of my talk, at what cost? Is the price going to be big, or are we going to see a decline in price because we have, and the technology, the price goes down with mass use. So hopefully we will witness something new in the future, in the coming few years.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Salah.
Maybe what we can comment on as well in Jordan is the amount of data that is available through the AmCham platform. So having this electronic medical records platform in Jordan is a big wealth of data that could be further explored to actually come up with also digital health solutions, or to do some predictive algorithms that could support also the patients or the diagnosis in Jordan. But there is a strong infrastructure in Jordan that could be an accelerator for this era of medicine, if we can say it.
Yes. By this, we would like to big thank to our speakers and to the audience for hearing us. Thank you so much, and thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Riyad. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.